All right, before we go ahead and get into the actual fantasy news of the day, I'm going to do some quick debunking of this cover that has been sent to me far too many times. It is not, as far as I can tell, the official Winds of Winter cover art. How do I know that? One, that is not how they would reveal the Winds of Winter cover art, by just letting the artist who created it post it up on their Instagram. Two, yes, this person has worked with George R. R. Martin in the past and is an official artist of A Song of Ice and Fire, but in their actual putting up of this Winds of Winter art, they put hashtag fan art in it. I think it's also worth pointing out that the centerpiece is not actually centered. Thank you, Discord, for pointing that out. And finally, the artist themselves has gone on to troll a bit in the comments, and yeah, I'm pretty damn sure this is just someone having some fun. Stop sending it to me. But without any further ado, let us go ahead and jump on into the fantasy news. Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I am your disheveled goblin host who actually checks to make sure things are legit before just throwing up a video most of the time, but not always, Daniel Green. And today, I want to start out by apologizing for not getting you fantasy news on Friday. The week just got away from me, and that's really it. Now let's go ahead and jump into the first real story of the day, which is going to be my favorite story about Red Rising, because it seems we are getting a graphic audio book from, surprise, Graphic Audio that will not be an Audible exclusive and is going to come out in 2 parts. For those of you unaware of what exactly a graphic audio book is, which I've encountered a surprising number of, and to be honest, I didn't know for the longest time, it means there is a full cast, usually, of actors involved with the audiobook and added sound design to make it more of like an audio movie, as all the marketing says, than a traditional audiobook read by 1 or possibly 2 narrators. The first part of this graphic audio duology will be launching March 22nd, so it is right around the corner, and the second part will be launching in May, with MP3 CDs available for each about a month later, though I don't exactly know what that is, to be honest. Not only do I like seeing this because I'm a Red Rising fan, and of course want this series to be adapted into as many quality ways as possible, but I hope this speaks to the continued interest into Red Rising as a whole franchise for grander and more ambitious adaptations down the road. Not that a graphic audio is not a big endeavor. Just obviously Red Rising is in like my top 10 sci-fi fantasy series in terms of why the hell has this not been adapted yet? Is that a video idea? Just 5? Why hasn't it been adapted? Franchises. But the final note for the story is this is not the first Red Rising book to get the graphic audio treatment. Though it is the first Red Rising book, we have already seen Son of Ares have the graphic audio treatment, which is a prequel to the first book. But what's this? A delay, because it seems that Jiren-J Zhao has come out and said that they will be delaying their next book, Heavenly Tyrant, until April 30th of 2024. They also supplied a full thread explaining how exactly this happened and seem to be genuinely disappointed that they won't be able to bring their book to their fans as quickly as they would like to, but I just want to make it clear, yes, there are extreme cases out there of delays that have angered fans in the past, but 99.99999% of reasonable people will understand 1 or 2 delays, especially if you're following it up with transparency of how and why it happened and an additional release date. I don't even think it's something you really need to apologize for, because most fans will tell you, oh yeah, delay it, get it into the shape you absolutely want it to be for us before handing it over. That's just reasonable. So I think Jiren-J Zhao has done nothing wrong here. I certainly appreciate the apologetic tone they seem to be striking on their thread. It's also a bit unnecessary in my book, and I just really respect how they're handling this overall. Oh my god, it's so beautiful. And what I'm of course referring to is He Who Drowned the World's cover has officially been released for the UK. This is the sequel to She Who Becomes the Sun from Shelley Parker Chan. Shout out to the cover designer and illustrator Lucy Schloss, great job. Now don't get me wrong though, I would absolutely love for this to be the cover of the day because I think it is stunning, but it was blown out of the water by Tor with their release of Jinn-Bot of Santiport by Samit Basu. And this cover, whoo! I love the color palette. I like the amount of depth you get, the world building within it. This is the kind of cover I just want to stare at for a long time, and I feel like I can already immerse myself a bit in the world without even reading a word of the text, and that's impressive. And the beginning of the blurb reads, Santiport was supposed to be a getaway to the stars, but the city is sinking, and its colonist rulers aren't helping anyone but themselves. Lena, a daughter of failed revolutionaries, has no desire to escape Santiport. She loves her city and would do anything to save its people. This is, in fact, the plan for her life, made before she was even born. Story about destined underdogs to overthrow colonist rulers? Count me in. That was a score tally, but you know, same meaning. I don't even know what I was going for there. And in Get That Bag news, Lee Bardugo has apparently signed a deal with Macmillan for 12 books in return for an 8-figure payday. Whoo! Authors achieving some serious levels of success here. Congratulations to Lee Bardugo and to her fans. How do you feel knowing that this author is not only, yes, definitely one of the biggest names in the YA or just fantasy space, but also that you are getting at least 12 more books from them? And where would you like to see them go with those 12 books if you're a diehard Bardugo buddy? I don't know what she calls her fans. The Bar Dudes. Oh, call them the Bar Dudes! And in big news for the puppet world, Guillermo del Toro, off of his Oscar win for Pinocchio. I mean, okay, is this too much of a stretch because I'm puppeting it, and he won an Oscar for Pinocchio, which is a puppet movie, and from there, he's moving on to adapt Frankenstein from Mary Shelley. And he's brought on Andrew Garfield, Oscar Isaac, and Mia Goth to that adaptation. So was that tangentially close enough for this puppet joke to work? Or is this just a way for me to get through this fantasy news story in a different kind of cadence and energy so it still feels fresh from everything else we're talking about? Goodbye. I think I broke it. But before we get into some 80s and 90s sci-fi news, a quick word from today's sponsor.
There is nothing more frightening than reading slumps.
Thankfully, Wraithmarked's got you covered. Wraithmarked Creative just cracked $100,000 raised on their Kickstarter for the deluxe edition of Sufficiently Advanced Magic by Andrew Rowe. It has a 2-piece cover with unique art on the front and back of the book, a leatherette spine with gold stamped foiling, and gold gilding on the page edges, as well as a custom interior design with embellished chapter headings and full-color end sheets. It will also feature high-quality offset printing, an attached ribbon bookmark, and at least 10 unique interior art pieces, with more to be unlocked with each Kickstarter stretch goal that is reached. This campaign is also a great place to grab any of the past Wraithmarked editions you might have missed, like the incredibly successful The Sword of Kaigen edition that wrapped last November. So if you're interested in checking any of these out, or looking for something to help you out of your reading slump, head on over to their Kickstarter to see all of their projects.
Gattaca, the sci-fi dystopian movie that has a catalyst largely revolving around gene editing, is apparently getting a Showtime limited series that takes place one generation after the events of the movie. But while this is far too early on in development for us to know any concrete details like a release date, we do know it is being brought to us by Howard Gordon and Alex Gensa. I'll have their IMDb's right here. Oh, don't, editing Daniel, don't not put them there. Editing Daniel, come on! And something I didn't even know was in the works, Blade Runner 2099, which is apparently being developed by Amazon Studios, or Prime Video, has added a director for its pilot, as well as slotting them in as a producer. Jeremy Podswa, whose IMDb, once again, I will have right here. Come on, editing Daniel! What's that? We have another last-minute update. Because yes, while I was actually recording this, new news dropped around the shipment issues that have been happening with the Sanderson secret projects. This story has been rapidly developing, almost too much so for me to accurately cover here on Fantasy News, but there have been some printing issues from the Sanderson camp and their current printer when it comes to getting the projects in the order and time they were promised in to the fans. But it seems that Sanderson and company have been working their best to try and actually get these to people who have paid for them, and now we have seen that Tress of the Emerald Sea and the secret project will be resuming shipping. Being perfectly honest, I did kind of expect to see shipping issues when it came to the secret projects just due to how wildly massive the number of books that were going to have to end up being shipped with a $40 million Kickstarter. But as we have seen in their latest Kickstarter update, they have just received another shipment from their printer that has been giving them some trouble. And if you are someone who is still waiting for their Tress, you should be keeping an eye out for a potential tracking number. But getting into the final story of the day, it seems that The Last of Us has in its final moments passed House of the Dragon in terms of viewership averages, averaging just over 1 more million viewers per episode. This cements The Last of Us technically as a bigger audience gatherer than House of the Dragon. And I am slightly surprised to see this. If you had told me before the show was even released, I probably wouldn't have even believed you. After witnessing the just crazy word of mouth Last of Us has been benefiting from, yeah, it's a lot more reasonable that they have squeaked over at the end. But what I will be more interested in is which seasons 2 will do better. Will House of the Dragon manage to, just through its word of mouth, regather up the insane numbers that Game of Thrones used to have, or will the long-term word of mouth for Last of Us continue to spread and enough people will play the first game to come back and then be interested for the second game? Though the Last of Us second game is divisive. No matter where you fall in that debate, there's going to be some people who aren't as interested in a season 2, and will that drag it back down under a House of the Dragon season 2? I'm actually fairly interested to see the outcome here, so I'm sure I'll bring it up in a Fantasy News in the far future. But this has just been your latest episode of Fantasy News. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and hit the Patreon if you'd like to support what I do here. I got books, and thank you so much to Wraithmarked Creative for sponsoring this video, and check out Andrew Rowe's Sufficiently Advanced Magic Deluxe Edition Kickstarter, and of course, the comments and description down below. Have a good one, y'all. Goodbye!